Michael Gately will be sharing his screen shortly. This one is entitled Conducting FY25 Results-Based Monitoring, What LEAs Need to Know. Again, welcome you this morning. I am Geneva Taylor. I am the Senior Director of Compliance and Operations within the Division of Federal Programs and Oversight here at the Tennessee Department of Education. This presentation will be co-presented and folks will introduce themselves as they speak. Also want to give a special shout out to Stan and Latrice who are monitoring the chat as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who have been with us all morning, you have heard me discuss that we are all involved in the pillars of Best for All. And we are here to support you with making sure that your academics are high quality, that your students are ready for the academic and non-academic needs in school, and that we are supporting you to support your educators to ensure that you have effective, efficient, and compliant programs, regardless of your zip code. So today we're going to discuss results-based monitoring levels 3 and 2, how to prepare for FY25 results-based monitoring, what your pre-work will look like in submitting the instrument, an introduction to the cross-cutting section, what the visit and follow-up is like, and then we will close out this session. First, when we monitor, we commit to engage in meaningful and open dialogue. It's not accusatory. We commit to reduce the number of findings. We do not have a quota. We want to provide you training and technical assistance prior to monitoring to reduce the likelihood that you'll have a finding of noncompliance. But we also want to provide you an accurate and comprehensive review of all of our federal programs and fiscal components. We want to celebrate with you when you exceed requirements and provide follow-up assistance based on your corrective actions. And of course, we want to empower you to build upon your compliance, to implement and execute effective programs that have positive outcomes for your students. So results-based monitoring level 3, let's just dive on in. So when the timeline begins, and the first visit is typically in mid-October, 6 weeks before that, ePlan is open to LEAs to begin uploading data. And then we have an agenda that we finalize and we discuss that information with you a few weeks beforehand to ensure that you are prepared for our visit. We also discuss any documents that are required that were missing in your pre-work to give you a second chance to gather those together for us. Then we conduct our in-person visit. That includes interviews or discussions, conversations. Pick the least stressful word to describe that for yourself. And we review our on-site documents. So anything in person that we need to review, specifically inventory. I know our fiscal colleagues review several items in person because it's just easier as well. Then our team returns back to their home offices and we review our notes and we confirm any research that we need to do and write your monitoring results. And then we review monitoring results with you about 2 weeks after the visit. And that includes any corrective actions, findings of noncompliance, suggestions, etc. And that is via Teams, where you can ask questions, request extensions, etc. We did identify approximately 12% of LEAs for significant review, so level 3 monitoring. So that'll be approximately 18 LEAs for the FY25 school year. Again, those notifications will come out by the 1st of September, if not beforehand. Our introduction meeting this year will be held virtually 1 or 2 business days prior to our scheduled in-person monitoring. And FPO and fiscal monitoring colleagues conduct on-site visits to the LEAs, but those visits may not be concurrent this year. So some of the feedback we received both from LEAs and our monitors is that several folks wear multiple hats, and so it might be easier sometimes for some of our smaller LEAs to have an ESSA program visit to be on day 1 and then the IDEA visit to be on day 2 because you're responsible for both. So we are paying particular attention to the roles that each person fills when we're scheduling out these events. And then lastly, LEA and school level interviews. So what does that look like for level 3? Well, our 20 most populous LEAs have 3 Title I schools identified to participate in monitoring. And when applicable, one of the following schools are always identified as well: non-public, virtual, alternative, and charter. For our other LEAs, you'll have just 2 Title I schools. If you are fortunate enough to be small enough that you only have 1 school, we will not monitor that school twice. You will only be subject to 1 Title I school if that's all you have in your district. And then for our CTE programs, we choose 20% or 2 high schools, whichever is greater. So scheduling will come out from fpo.monitoring@tn.gov, as well as your notifications will come from that area. You will first receive a risk analysis email, and then you will receive key dates. And that includes your pre-work deadline, which is 10 business days or 2 weeks before your assigned visit dates. Our first visits and our virtual discussions will begin in mid-October. So we are coming up on those first sets of dates. Our in-person visits, they vary in length depending on the size and the complexity of each LEA. So if you're a very small district, it's possible that you might have a 2-day visit instead of a 1 because you're 1 person and have to answer a lot of questions. If you're a mid-sized district, it's possible that we can do that over 1 day because there are more people to answer those questions. And for our larger districts, it's very likely that your visit will be conducted over 4 or even 5 full days. Each school visit averages about 2.5 to 3 hours in length. It really depends on how chatty our monitors are and how chatty you are. If you have lots to be proud of and walk us through all of the components of your school districts, they can take a little bit longer. For folks who are very short on answers, it also can take a little bit longer because our monitors will ask and remind what the components are of each discussion topic to make sure that you have the opportunity to reply to those. All of our in-person visits will be completed by January 31st, 2025. And our monitoring results reviews, colloquially known as exits, will remain virtual in Microsoft Teams. All right, I'll turn it over to Michael for level 2.
Yeah, so I'm Michael Gately. I'm the Perkins Compliance Manager for those that have joined us since I last introduced myself. I work with Geneva and the others in federal programs and oversight to monitor as well as do other duties. So we're going to look at results-based monitoring level 2 now. So we've got our little flow chart here. So to explain this, and kind of break it down. So LEAs are going to be informed of when the instruments are opened in ePlan. Again, that should be mid-October. LEAs will have at least 6 weeks to work on their pre-work prior to the monitoring dates. The department's going to hold a pre-visit meeting with the LEA approximately 1 to 2 weeks prior to the monitoring dates to talk through the process and to allow the LEA time to ask questions. Based on the reviews of the information provided by the LEA, the department will estimate the amount of time that we need to converse with the different grant directors and staff in the LEA. Again, so level 2, everything happens virtually. We will not be physically on site, just as a reminder for that. And we are going to hold our virtual discussions. They're going to take place to clarify or to dig deeper into the different topic areas based on the pre-work reviews. Those dates and times will be scheduled ahead of time. It won't be a surprise type thing. So we will schedule that ahead of time through the FPO monitoring account as well. And then after we have those conversations, the monitoring team's going to go back or stay virtually and look through all of the documentation, the additional notes that were taken, and the information that was looked at in the pre-work. They're going to write the results. And we will hold that results meeting, or as Geneva called it, the exit meeting, like some people call it, approximately 10 to 15 business days after the monitoring date. All right, so again, with level 2, we have identified approximately 12% of the LEAs for elevated review in that level 2 area. That is our mid-level monitoring level. So we have the 3 levels, 3, 2, 1. This is middle level. FPO and fiscal monitoring teams are going to hold those virtual discussions with LEAs. We started that last year to ensure that we are getting the clarifying information we need from LEAs and to reduce the number of findings that we write. Based on maybe just information we didn't see but was actually there. Maybe we just couldn't get our hands on it for some reason, but this has helped to reduce the amount of results that we are writing. LEAs are going to have those virtual discussions to allow the department to seek that clarity, and then not all LEA level staff will be required to attend those virtual conversations. We will again confirm with the LEA who we need to speak to and how long we need to speak to them and the times and dates and all of that good stuff. Again, the scheduling is going to occur through the FPO monitoring account. So you'll see the emails come from that. Pre-work is going to be due in the instrument 10 business days before the assigned monitoring dates. That just allows our team to review that, come up with any additional questions, and determine how long we need to have to speak to those federal grant directors. So the first virtual discussions are going to begin in January. So a few reminders, school level reviews have been removed from the process as they were last year. So there are no school level pages in the level 2 instrument, you'll notice. And then some questions at the LEA level may require school specific responses, but that doesn't mean you have to have the school level folks complete those sections. It just might ask questions about processes or procedures that happen at the school level. All right, and now we're going to move into preparing for FY25 RBM. Miss Terry is going to take this section.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Terry Manning, and I am the ESSA Compliance Manager, and I serve on the Federal Programs and Oversight team. All right, so preparing for FY25 monitoring. First things first, you will need access to ePlan. So once you secure your access, you may log into ePlan, choose the monitoring instruments 2025, ensure that you have the appropriate year listed there. You're going to select results-based monitoring level 3 or results-based monitoring level 2. Once you do that, you can click on Draft Started at the top of that sections page to begin your pre-work. It's going to open up the instrument and you'll be able to start working on your instrument and putting your responses, uploading documentation. If access is needed, you would need to complete and return the ePlan LEA user access form. Please note that the instruments will open roughly 6 weeks prior to the scheduled monitoring date. All right, so most pages within the instrument will require you to upload evidence. You will be required to upload documentation. You must upload at least the minimum number of documents identified next to each document name. If you have multiple documents to upload for evidence, you are able to continue to upload as many documents as necessary to meet that compliance requirement to provide that proper evidence. One thing I want you to note is that you cannot, and please do not upload personally identifiable information. No PII. We do not need to know students' names. Please include ID numbers instead of the PII. No students' names. All right, so we have some, excuse me, so there are some practices within the level 2 and level 3 monitoring instruments that require responses to short questions or statements. Next to each item, there's a drop-down box to choose from. You must choose agree or disagree. If you choose disagree, you must provide a justification. Please note that just because you choose disagree, that does not automatically mean that you are out of compliance. You just need to provide a justification for why you disagree. You also have the option to choose not applicable. If you choose agree, yes, or not applicable, there is no need to justify the response. Only when you choose disagree, you are required to put a justification in that space. All right. The level 2 and level 3 instruments also require responses to questions. They're open responses. You will be required to provide narratives. Read each question or statement thoroughly and respond with enough information to address all elements of that question. Provide as much information as you need to meet that requirement. Right? You do not need to reiterate items that you've already uploaded. You may put in the narrative to refer to an uploaded document that you've submitted. If there is additional information needed, you are free to upload a document in the appropriate area on the related documents page. All right, you want to ensure if you are uploading any additional documents on the related documents page that you clearly label and name that particular document, especially if you're going to reference that document in the narrative. All right, so how to prepare. You want to divide those responsibilities with your colleagues. You want to identify the most appropriate person who's going to be your point of contact for the school level pages. Just a reminder, school level pages are only for level 3 monitoring. All right, you want to divide and conquer. Next slide. You want to discuss those responsibilities and timelines with the colleagues. All right, so we want to go through all of those questions in your instrument, any documentation, any evidence that's needed. Gather all of that documentation. Then you may want to move to answering those agree and disagree questions. Again, if you disagree, please give an explanation. Then you can move on to answering all of your open response questions, and you may refer to any uploads when necessary in those narratives. One thing I want you to remember here is do not use placeholder documents or placeholder language in your answers. Sometimes we may say, well, Ms. Manning is going to answer this question. We'll come back to that. And then you may forget that Ms. Manning is required to answer that question. And now you've submitted your instrument and it appears that your question is answered when it actually isn't. Now you've submitted that instrument with a placeholder language there and you don't actually have your evidence or your narrative in that space as required. So just be mindful of your placeholder language. Ask for help. We will have a pre-monitoring meeting that's going to be pre-scheduled 4 weeks before your monitoring date. That is your opportunity to ask any and every question that you may have or share any concerns you may have regarding this monitoring process. We are here to support you. We are here to help you. This is not a I got you. We are in this together. We're working towards the same goal, doing what's best for children. So we are here for you. Please ask any clarifying questions and ask for technical assistance if needed. All right, I'm going to hand this off to G for LEA pre-work.
Thanks, Terry. You always tell if folks have a great working relationship, aren't scared of monitoring if they call me G. If you're feeling neutral about it, you might know me as Geneva. And if you're feeling just really, really nervous, maybe it's Miss Taylor. I'll answer to any of them, but you can use that trick to just very easily let me know how you're feeling about monitoring. I'll know how you address me. So let's talk a little bit more about pre-work and what that's going to look like. Of course, the monitoring team has pre-work as well. Our pre-work is really happening a lot right now. We've ran our risk analysis and now we're prepping our notifications for all of you to know your monitoring type, your dates, the schools that we're selecting, and your scheduled exit or monitoring results review date. When the monitoring instruments first open, you'll have to give us maybe a business day, but we begin marking specific sections for you as not applicable based on the student population of each LEA. So if you do not have a non-public school, we will mark that page NA. You do not have a virtual school, we'll mark that page NA. You do not receive Title V rural initiative funds, then we're going to mark that page not applicable for you as well. We'll conduct a conference call with you to discuss the visit, expectations, the agenda, answer questions like Terry mentioned, but that's not the only time we will be around to answer questions. We ask that you reach out to us proactively and often. Please ask for support. In prep, we also review information in e-plans such as your CFA or your Perkins Basic applications. We look in EIS to learn about the unique structure of your school district. We review state report cards, annual performance reports, because we know that every single one of you on this phone call, regardless of the LEA you represent, no one else is exactly like you across the state. You don't have the exact same number of students enrolled or the exact same English learners or whatever it might be, and probably no one has the exact same job duties as you. So we do some research on the front end to better understand how the LEA is organized. So on your side, we expect that you review the monitoring instrument and participate in that pre-visit conference call with us, that you'll schedule meetings with other personnel within your LEA to prepare for monitoring. Again, please do not try to do this alone. Invite your friends, your enemies, and your frenemies to help you out, even if they're not regularly involved in your programmatic work. I am sure that there are plenty of people that respect you across the LEA to dive in and help double check uploads to make sure that they're actually there, or to double check that you actually answered all of the questions, whatever it might be. We ask that you reach out and contact FPO and fiscal coordinators and consultants or project directors for assistance, that you upload your required evidence, you respond to those pre-visit questions, you submit your pre-work, that you confirm the agenda and the needs of the monitoring team. We will need a place to work and to converse with you. Terry and I have squeezed ourselves into a former closet that was someone's office. We're happy to do that. We're happy to take a large conference room. We will work with you and the confines of your LEA and schools. And of course, we ask that you collect any information that was not uploaded or explain why items were not available. So when things don't apply, you just need to let us know. If there's a policy that you didn't know that you needed until you open that monitoring instrument, you let us know that as well. And we'll meet you exactly where you are and help you get to where you need to be. So after you submit all of your documentation, then our team then takes another turn at our pre-work. Again, we're going to review all of your responses, all of your required evidence. So all of those uploads, we're making notes on your compliant information, where we have follow-up questions, where things were unclear. And then we're going to prepare any of our on-site questions to facilitate our conversation. Specifically, when it comes to required evidence, I ask that you please only upload what is applicable. So if we're asking about your policy for child find in the IDEA section, it's best not to upload your entire IDEA special ed manual, just upload that one policy. Whatever you upload, we review it all. So in order to be compliant in that area, that document needs to be compliant. Totally fine to give us excerpts if it's part of a larger document. So my question to you, just as a little self-assessment really quick, is do you have the documentation that you need to get started? So if you receive your notification tomorrow, for example, do you have meeting documentation where you've met with your LEA level leaders? Do you have agendas with dates and titles? Do you have meeting invitations, presentation materials, and some sort of proof of attendance, be it a survey that people fill out online, or an old school sign-in sheet that has a legible name and role of the attendee, or what school they are attending on behalf of? Do you have written policies and procedures? And not only that, do they match what your actual practice is? We at the state often have to update our policies and procedures as well. It's just a regular part of doing business. We find a better way to do something, and we need to document that adjustment. You also need to have completed forms, surveys, and assessments. At times the monitoring instrument will ask for a template, but more often than not, we are asking for examples, which means completed examples of forms, surveys, and/or assessments. We want to make sure that your registration document does not have barriers to enrollment. So you're not requiring that social security number, not requiring that birth certificate, and instead you have alternate pathways for students to provide the information that you need, and that you have reviewed the required and optional documents that are requested for each applicable page. The default view of the monitoring instrument, notice above the dark blue bar, there's a selected school drop down that has nothing in it. That's your default view. So your default view begins with LEA pages showing. So if you look down in that screenshot for cross-cutting, you will see that LEA, it begins with LEA cross-cutting initiatives. If you see LEA in front of a page, it's the LEA's responsibility to complete that element. We also have TDOE pages. They are only viewable to us, so you do not need to worry about those. And there are pages specifically for schools and/or facilities. They would say school or facility in front of them. Your LEA users have access to adjust all pages. So does your school level folks. So please make sure that your schools understand if you are inviting your school level leaders, which is recommended. If you're inviting them in, please make sure they are selecting their school from that drop-down box up at the top before they complete any page information. So again, those LEA pages are going to appear below the site level. So it's going to be important to make sure that the school fills out the school section and they do not go into the LEA level section. It's important to have that meeting and norm with your school and LEA level folks of who is going to be responsible for what page in each area. For your documentation, all of your levels, your page layouts are going to be exactly the same. Required and optional documentation up at the top, your practices or your agree, disagree questions down below. Some of them will have NA options. Please choose whatever is accurate. If you agree, great. If you disagree, that's totally fine. Give us a very short explanation as to why. Not applicable. Do not have this subgroup of students. Do not have a participating non-public school. Whatever your disagree explanation is, provide that to us. And then your narratives, we ask that you answer the question, but not to provide more than what is asked. So if I ask you when something happens, you can give me a date or tell me it's in the fall, but you don't need to tell me why, who conducts it, you know, and all of the other details. When we want that information, we will have another question that asks that. Sometimes I think folks feel like more is more, but sometimes less is more. So we do advise that you answer the question. Don't feel like you need to provide a dissertation. And it's perfectly fine to copy and paste from other documents if this information already exists elsewhere and is accurate. So all of our LEA level sections are divided like this. So ESSA, IDEA, CTE, relief funding, and our other applicable pages. So ESSA is divided by title, so it goes by the law. Anything that is not applicable, we or you, depending on the page, can mark it as not applicable. For example, many of you do not use targeted assistance, so that page would not be required for you to complete. Several of you do not have charter schools. You would not need to complete that page or section. So we will mark those for you or work with you on how to get that done. For IDEA, the pages now align with the law, starting with last year. So this year is the same way. Again, pages that are applicable. If you happen to not have a preschool, if you're one of the few LEAs that do not have that process, maybe that page is not applicable to you. If you don't have a jail within your jurisdiction, that page would be marked not applicable as well. We also have our Perkins areas. Same goes for here. If it's not applicable, we will mark it as not applicable. And a few of our LEAs do not participate in Perkins basic funding. So this entire section is marked in A. Early funding, we are down to just one active grant, so ESSER 3.0. If you have a neglected or delinquent facility and you are identified for levels 3 or 2 for monitoring, it's very possible that we will link arms and be conducting our monitoring within the same monitoring instrument. I believe we have approximately 6 that overlap, so our team will work together to review all of the necessary pages, including these. If you do not have a neglected or delinquent area, or you were monitored prior to your results-based monitoring popping up, these areas would also be marked not applicable. Extended learning has an area. You would be notified in advance if that was applicable. And then, of course, our fiscal areas. All of these typically are applicable. We do have a few LEAs, again, that would not have Perkins or ESSER. Okay, I believe this section is still me. So some reminders. Let me double check. Is it Michael?
No.
It's you?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll turn it over to my good friend Michael.
Yeah. So when you're uploading, or excuse me, a few reminders first. When you're uploading current items, that's going to be for the fiscal pages. So make sure fiscal is current year items. For our program pages, you're going to upload last school year, if that's correct. If not, if you are looking at your last year's documentation and you say, well, this is not quite compliant, but I have this year is compliant, the documentation I have, go ahead and upload the most current compliant documentation there for the program pages. Reach out for support if that's a little confusing, if you don't quite understand that. But again, current for fiscal, last year for program, unless last year was not compliant. All right, so for submitting the instrument, after you respond to all the areas, use the validation column. You'll see towards the right-hand side next to all the section names, there's going to be a validation column of the sections. You can use that to see if there are messages for specific pages. You can click on that little link and it will show you if there's an error or a warning. If there is an error, that means there is an element missing that is required. If there is a warning, it might say an optional document was not uploaded, but just make sure that that was intentional or not, and then you can move on from there, excuse me. So you're going to confirm each uploaded document's accurate and complete. As Ms. Terry was talking about earlier, make sure that no placeholder documents or answers were typed in or uploaded. You're going to make sure that you have all the completed requirements. So communicating with the IDA director, ESSA director, CT director, and the finance director. And everyone is going to have to click in that order their approval on the instrument. And they're going to have to click the reviewed status there. And then at the end, the director of schools is going to have to select the LEA authorized representative approved status selection. So reminders, again, we're going to have the pre-work is due 10 business days prior to the first day of scheduled virtual or in-person visits. So make sure that that is completed. If you do need additional time, you can reach out, but due to time limitations of our team needing time to review all of that information, we may not be able to grant those extensions. That'll be on a case-by-case basis. Please navigate to the sections page and to the instructions and references notes in the monitoring instrument for additional information. Or again, you can reach out to fpo.monitoring@tn.gov or to Ms. Geneva or myself or any of the other team. I would be glad to answer your questions regarding monitoring.
All right. All right, introduction and cross-cutting review for level 3 and level 2. All right, so as I mentioned, we will have a pre-visit or a pre-call that will occur via Teams at the LEA level only. During this meeting, we will have team introductions of all of the monitoring team members. We will have LEA introductions. We will review the agenda and school visit plans. We will also use this as an opportunity to inform you of any missing or needed documentation. For example, we may say your LEA uploaded last year's fiscal documentation. We will need you to submit the current year's fiscal documentation, or we may say that the documentation you uploaded was not legible. So could you please re-upload that or resubmit that? We will also take this time to discuss cross-cutting items. This is an opportunity for us to simply get to know more about your LEA. It's an opportunity for you to highlight successes or tell us more about some of your positive initiatives that's going on in your district. Right. All right, visit and follow up for level 3 in person and level 2 virtual. All right, so the FPO team members, these are some of our roles and responsibilities. The FPO team members are the monitoring team. We will visit selected schools. We will interview leadership team, and we will also interview any specialized staff, meaning your ESL or special education teachers, if that's needed. We will review delivery of services and implementation of IEPs and also services and implementation of ILPs. We will end by interviewing the LEA level program directors, and we're also going to meet with the LEA level leaders to debrief or ask any additional follow-up questions. We may have some questions that need some clarification during our school visit, so that's why we end with interviewing or meeting with the LEA level leaders. All right, some school level reminders. If you're level 3 monitored, the monitoring team must meet concurrently in separate spaces with the following people. You're going to have your ESSA programs director, who's ever most knowledgeable of your ESSA programs, your IDEA programs, your CTE programs, and also your inventory, which will be a separate visit with the fiscal team. We do not need to speak with every teacher in the building. The lead team members do not need to be in every interview, and the LEA level members do not need to attend school visits. Again, once we finish with our school level visits, we will end the day with our meeting with the LEA level members. All right, so post-visit and follow-up. The monitoring team, our responsibility is to finalize the monitoring results following the monitoring visit. We will also formally exit, excuse me, you may know this as the results exit meeting. We will have that meeting with the LEA level leaders during a Microsoft Teams meeting. We will also share your exit meeting date in a notification email. We will share the results of your monitoring via ePlan, and we will also change the status to close when all obligations are met. Right? So the LEA level leadership team members, you will have the opportunity to ask questions about monitoring results, action steps, and deadlines during your exit meeting. You will be required to acknowledge the results were reviewed with you via ePlan. Once you acknowledge the results, you would then start responding to the results requiring action in ePlan. So that's going to be all of your action steps and the deadlines or any documentation that's required. You will proactively reach out to the monitoring team with any questions while you're working on the results, meaning if there is additional clarification needed, you need some more guidance, feel free to reach out while you are working on your action steps and adhering to those deadlines. Your assigned FPO divisional coordinators and your regional fiscal consultants will follow up on findings of noncompliance and provide support to you.
Thank you, Terry. So I am here to close us out. Want to turn your attention to some resources. For those of you that have been with us for a moment, you've probably heard me mention this before, but want to again take this opportunity to let you know that whether this is day 1 or year 25, you do have access to historical information in ePlan. So if you were not with the LEA that you are currently with now, you can go back in ePlan, click on monitoring instruments, and navigate to FY24 and look at the sections page. You can see the content that was submitted. You can also see the monitoring results from last year. Also want to remind you that risk analysis data should be available at the end of the month or in early September. That's going to be available in the data and information area. We will provide a notification to you when that is available and provide instructions on how to access that. You will have access to the risk analysis guide as well by that time, so you can walk through it and have data conversations with your team members. Lastly, on this slide, FPO monitoring office hours are going to start back up here very soon. So announcements and invites will be coming out. One thing I do want to mention is that IEP monitoring hours are going to remain on Mondays. They will be from 11 to 12 Central, which is 12 to 1 Eastern. And results-based monitoring office hours are peeling off. We will be on Fridays from 12 to 1 Central or 1 to 2 Eastern. So we invite you to grab your lunch, depending on what time zone you are in, and join us if you have questions. Oftentimes we do not have fresh content. We may have a topic that we will discuss for a few minutes, but the intention there is for you to come in and ask questions specifically about your monitoring instrument or your IEP monitoring, and for us to provide technical assistance to you there. Our IEP monitoring protocol for FY25 version 1 is available. You'll hear more about that from Laura Dunn in the very near future. And I believe it is also already available in TN Pulse. So looking forward to seeing version 1 and talking through that with you guys later this morning, as well as discussing a little bit about the version 2 that will be coming up. So that's exciting. I would be remiss if I did not show you this slide, fraud, waste, or abuse. If we were fraudulent, wasteful, or abusive with your time for the past hour, please let the comptroller know. Hopefully you do not feel that way. Hopefully this information was useful. And this is the evaluation for this session. We ask that you use your phone to complete the eval. Ask that you put Michael Gately's name, since he was the person sharing the slide deck. And in question 10, if you could please put something about either session 3 or conducting RBM, results-based monitoring, that would help us differentiate your survey result from any of the others that you've already submitted today. I'm going to go ahead and leave this slide up, but also just say thank you for attending conducting FY25 results-based monitoring, what LEAs need to know. We hope you found that very helpful. I know that the Q&A is working for, it looks like, a ton of you. If it is not, feel free to use the chat section